Well, it's Kol Nidre, perhaps the holiest moment of the year. We are all embarking on a luxurious journey that few people get to experience, and that is the journey into yourself, into your own inner self, taking this sacred moment to step outside of the hustle and bustle, the challenges of the everyday. Our stated goal for the next 24 hours or so is spiritual self-reflection. Where are we in our lives, and where do we want to be? Focusing on our soul is facilitated by turning away from the needs of our body during this time period. Traditionally, we fast from food and water. We pay minimal attention to personal hygiene. We avoid sexual activity, and we refrain from wearing leather. Scholars at ASU have undertaken a multi-year study on the impact of religious fasting. And they have found that fasting, when combined with attendance at services, is important, quote, for self-reflection, spiritual transformation, and closeness to the Jewish people, which in turn are linked with well-being and flourishing, unquote. So it's not enough that we fast, we also need to come together, and that unlocks an opportunity for personal growth. Yet before we turn to nurturing our souls, there is a lot to be said for caring for the vessels in which our souls reside, that is, our physical bodies. Forgetting what I said earlier about personal hygiene, it turns out that caring for our bodies is also a mitzvah. There is a very famous Talmudic story in which Rabbi Hillel is stopped by his students on his way to the bathhouse. They are surprised when he says he is en route to do a mitzvah. And he explains to them that just as there are workers paid to clean and care for the statues of the king in the public square, so are we who are formed in the image of God required to care for our physical well-being. The body is the house of the soul, and we have an obligation to keep it in good repair. So what exactly does our body need? Some things are obvious. In the desert, we need water, lots of water. We need food, though what exactly constitutes healthy food is a constant subject of discussion among experts. The very first sin in the Torah is related to eating, and poor Eve, all she served was fresh fruit. And what was her punishment? Shame about her body. More about that in a few moments. I am not here to lecture you about keeping kosher. The Torah has a few quite reasonable requirements about what to eat and what not to eat. And over the centuries, we have expanded that into an enormous industry and endless halachic minutia. From a simple requirement not to boil a kid in its mother's milk, we are asked to maintain 2 separate sets of dishes for meat and dairy, to wait up to 6 hours after a meat meal before we can have some ice cream, and to abstain from eating dairy with poultry, even though chickens don't have mother's milk. Unfortunate to me, because the expansion of kashrut beyond the biblical text has caused most non-Orthodox Jews to just reject the whole enterprise. So perhaps thinking about what you might want to add a sense of holiness to your eating, and certainly please consider that routinely saying a blessing before you eat is an easy and meaningful way to elevate our meals and connect this most physical of activities with our spiritual essence. And it doesn't even have to be a traditional blessing, just a moment of gratitude for those who grew and prepared the food will suffice. Our bodies also need rest. Observing Shabbat is a mitzvah. It's right there in the Ten Commandments, along with the instruction to work 6 days a week. And I love this Hasidic story about how one rabbi learned the value of sleep. Rabbi Shmelki did not want to interrupt his studies for too long a time, and so he always slept sitting up, his head resting on his arm, and in his fingers he held a lit candle, which roused him when it guttered and the flame touched his hand. When Rabbi Elimelech visited him and recognized the power of the holiness which was still locked within him, he prepared a couch for him and with great difficulty persuaded him to lie down for a little while. Then he closed and shuttered the windows, and Rabbi Shmelki slept until broad daylight. It did not take him long to notice this, but he was not sorry that he had slept, for he was filled with a hitherto unknown sunny clearness. And he went to the house of prayer and prayed before the congregation as usual. But to the congregation, it seemed as if they had never heard him before. They were entranced and uplifted by the manifest power of his holiness. And when they recited the verses about the Red Sea, they gathered up the hems of their caftans for fear the waves towering to their right and left might get their clothing wet with salty foam. Later, Shmelki said to Elimelech, "Not until this day did I know that one can also serve God with sleep." Food, yes. Rest, yes. We also need physical movement, and here, Jewish tradition does not offer a lot of guidance. We call the house of study a yeshiva, which comes from the Hebrew root lashevet, to sit. Sitting, I've heard it said, is the new smoking, not good for our health. So under the general proviso in Deuteronomy, guard yourself and guard your soul very carefully, I think we can say that exercise is a positive value. Maimonides suggests that as long as a person exercises and exerts himself, sickness will not befall him and his strength will increase. Sadly, that is not literally the case. Sickness and diminution of strength come to us regardless of how much time we spend at the gym. The best we can do is care for and appreciate the abilities with which we have been blessed for as long as we can. So let's go back to Adam and Eve. There they were, enjoying life in the Garden of Eden. They ate the forbidden fruit and became embarrassed about their nakedness. In their shame, they hid from the Holy One. Along with everything else our bodies need, the hardest of all may be acceptance. It is incredibly challenging to maintain a healthy body image in a culture that bombards us with impossible images of physical perfection. We live in a world obsessed with how our bodies look, how thin, how fit, how smooth, how youthful. We're told explicitly and subtly that only certain types of bodies are worthy of love, of attention, of success. Just this past week, I read in the Arizona Republic the tragic story of the death of a 14-year-old girl who died of complications following surgery for breast implants. I was powerfully moved by the words of Holly Holden, who writes, "Today, I asked my body what she needed, which is a big deal considering my journey of not really asking that much. I thought she might need more water or protein or greens. I wondered what it was that my body needed the most, yoga or supplements or movement. But as I stood in the shower, reflecting on her stretch marks, her roundness where I would like flatness, her softness where I would like firmness, all those conditioned wishes that form a bundle of never quite rightness, she whispered very gently, 'Could you just love me like this? Could you just love me like this?' So simple, yet so profound. When someone feels ashamed of their body, they're not just struggling with self-esteem, they're struggling to believe that they are truly B'Tselem Elohim, a holy image of God. At the end of our lives, when we look back on our life and legacy, I like to think that how we looked will matter less and how we used whatever physical abilities we have to bring light and joy and goodness and caring into the world will matter a whole lot more. I need to say a few words about serious illness. The blessing on page 156 in your Machzor, Asher Yatzar, is traditionally a prayer of thanks after we successfully go to the bathroom. Our liturgy has expanded it in a more generic sense to be a blessing in which we appreciate whatever is functioning well, acknowledging that if something opened when it was supposed to close or vice versa, we would be in big trouble. The prayer is a reminder to appreciate our well-being and not wait until things go wrong to reach out to God. Yet we must acknowledge the reality that things can and do go horribly wrong, so much so that the pain of living becomes intolerable. We feel betrayed by our bodies, angry. We may even feel a sense of mourning when we consider the loss of who we were and who we want to be. In the Machzor, on the opposite page of the Asher Yatzar prayer, I found these touching words by May Sarton. I can look at my body as an old friend who needs my help, or as an enemy who frustrates me in every way with its frailty and inability to cope. Old friend, I shall try to be of comfort to you to the end. Feeling good about your body in illness may not mean feeling beautiful or strong. We may need to find small moments to appreciate what we are still able to do, allowing friends, family, and community to offer support, and still connecting with and acknowledging that while our body is suffering, our soul is not diminished. It may also mean giving yourself full permission not to feel good sometimes, to rest in sorrow without shame. And so, as we enter this holiest day of the year, we strive to create a day of spiritual self-reflection, of focusing on our soul, on our character, on the essence of our being. And as we do so, let's never forget that we are first and foremost physical beings. Let us care for our bodies, be kind to our bodies, appreciate our bodies, even as we strive to elevate our neshama, our holy soul. If you are fasting, I wish you a good fast, a meaningful fast. If you are not, that's okay too. Let's all use the gift of this day to remind ourselves of our essential wholeness, body and soul together.